Today, I am going to my presentation on the topic of modernism and its characteristics. This is my personal information. Points to ponder: introduction, definition, characteristics of modernism, break from traditional forms and conventions, interest in new technologies and science. Quote and work cited. Introduction. Modernism is a literary movement which started in late 19th century, late and early 20th century. Modernism is taken for a historical information rather than a concept or even a fantasy. Some first formulation is necessary. Modernism seems once again something for elite sensibilities, for special minds and rarefied understanding, and once again the introductory book seems to eager to mimic its mystified object. Ironically, sincerely, demystifications would work ever better where modernism exclaimed before being exposed. Modernism introductory simplicity could be high on the list of ready commodities, strong sell, and it could be bridge that leads us to all back to the world of monographic complexity. It affected the literary form and expression. It is also known as a self-conscious break in both prose and poetry. Definitions: modernism or the modernisque or art nouveau, that is honestly and logically modern in the sense of being contemporary and functional and what is merely affected. These extreme digressions are the result of a desire to get completely away from the fallacious period styles and to do something entirely new with no ties to the past. Modernist writing a good idea to hard are applying a categorical logic to architecture with excessive rigor and forgetting that architecture must have an aesthetic soul as well as material body have become illogical through an excess of a narrow logic. Modern social gospel is a reflection of the models of the modes of social thinking developed during the 19th century and 20th century. The movement from Charles Darwin to Herbert Spencer was the movement from evolution as a grandiose a philosophy of inevitable progress. Characteristics of modernism in an era characterized by industrialization, the nearly global adoptions of capitalism, rapid social change, and advances in science and the social sciences. Modernists felt a growing alienation incompatible with Victorian morality, optimism, and convention. New ideas in psychology, philosophy, and political theory kindled a search for new modes of expression. First characteristics: modernism and science. The problem of modernizing a Christian is set for him principally by the development of modern science. It is inevitable that there should appear a similarity between modernist theology and scientific method. Modernism and individualism. Modernism is implicated in the modern world also by the absorption of certain typically modern social attitudes. Faith in democracy, a second characteristic attitude of modern life has been the belief in democracy. This is the political and economic concomitant of individualism. The new humanism, a third characteristic attitude of modern thought, may be summed up in the phrase the new humanism. The backgrounds of this humanism are to be found as already suggested in the Renaissance discovery of full and lusty human life. The new humanism has been characterized by a new anthropocentrism. The optimistic bias, a fourth characteristic of modern thinking, is optimism. Historically, this seems to have come about when rationalism degenerated into sentimentalism. Although Leibniz grounded optimism in a philosophical theory of pre established harmony in the universe. Break from traditional forms and conventions. Architecture has to become an art once again. Architects say the painting and sculpture have no relationship to architecture. On the contrary, facts past and present indicate no, not only that collaboration is possible, practices and desirable. The problem is not whether integration can be realized, but how it is to be realized. George Nelson recognizes when he says the traditional notion of nailing naked young men and women onto walls or pasting murals to the insides of buildings seems pretty dead. Many of our architects today are unconscious of the debt they owe such men as Mondrian, then Van Doesburg, Venton Gerlu, and others who pioneered the modern style. Since some architects apparently aren't aware of the part that painting, for instance, can play in conjunction with architecture, it might not be amiss to enumerate just a few ways in which murals could contribute to architectural form. Interest in new technologies and science. In early 20th century, one of the major figures of the literary movement, who was Ezra Pound, and who was the American writer and critic. Modernism, science and technology renders a productive additional to today's modern studies. The insights Morrison offers through do not radically alter our perspective on modernism and technology. Morrison's conclusion that individual disciplines are often in the process of being reshaped by new cross-disciplining collaborations such as those of critical disability studies, science studies, and eco-criticism. His study certainly provides substance for rigorous debate. Morrison sets a fine example for future scholars of modernism interest in engaging with today's fundamental rethinking of the universe via science. This is the quote by Arthur Erickson. Modernism released us from the constraints of everything that had gone before with a euphoric sense of freedom. Here is my work cited. If you have any query, then ask me.
Anjali, my question is, what is modernist attitudes towards this movement?
Modernist attitude towards this movement, who starting with late 18th century and early 20th century, is towards uh, applying a categorical logic uh, and changing society. in art, science, and many political and art changing.
Anjali, how did the modernism reflect the changes in society during the late 19th century?
Modernism reflected the changes in society during the late 19th century, like in literature. In literature, Charles Dickens, who wrote about workers and changes society, and other side, like political change, artistic change, and also architecture and paints, and also changed, like urbanization. Thank you.